He was considering the Sentencing and Parole Reform Bill, and the question is that Part 1 stand part. Honourable Clayton Cosgrove had the call. He's got just over 4.5 minutes remaining.
Mr. Chair, thank you.
Clayton Cosgrove.
Before we resumed before the dinner break, I was speaking about the amendments that the Labor Party had put forward to mainly to Clause 5. And I was referring, Mr. Chair, to some comments Mr. Garrett had made, where he basically, in sort of colloquial language, accused the Labor Party of not playing fair, because we had not sort of dropped down on bended knee, crawled over to him and his ilk, and provided him at an early stage with the amendments that we were going to put forward. Well, in mitigation for that sort of accusation, sir, I'd make a couple of points. One is this Parliament, over the last 18 months, has been littered with pieces of legislation, whole pieces of legislation, some under the name of the Justice Minister, I think one or two under the name of this Minister, Ms Collins, which has been dropped on this Parliament with no notice, never seen by anybody in the Parliament apart from the Minister and the Cabinet. The second point I'd make is this, is that Mr Garrett is a lawyer. I am not, but I managed to work out some changes that I think needs to be made. Mr Garrett sat in the Select Committee, so did I, and my colleagues worked out some changes that had to be made. Mr Garrett heard the submitters submit on these issues, learned people. So did the folks on my side of the table, and we managed to work it out. And part of the role of an opposition, apart from opposing where they feel it's appropriate, is also to propose solutions, ideas and amendments. And I'm sure, Mr Chair, you could quote me the standing orders which would provide a framework for Mr Garrett to tell him that this is called a committee stage. This is where political parties and members of Parliament put forward amendments. It is not a requirement. I'm sure Mr Hyde, being a learned member of this chamber, would agree it's not a requirement that people submit themselves sort of on bended knee to the opposing party and say, here's all the ideas. Mr Garrett is a member of the legal profession. He heard the same people that I did, who had problems in respect of the manifestly unjust provisions on the third strike in Clause 5, in respect of the exclusion or suggestions about the exclusion of accidental or negligent manslaughter, issues around allowing guilty pleas to be a factor as per our proposals for Clause 5 in sentencing. And either he didn't understand them, either he dismissed them, or if, as he claims tonight, before the dinner break, that if he had had notice of them, he would have somehow shown goodwill, and I'll take him at his word, and he would have offered to have a look at them and see whether they'd be incorporated in the legislation. Well, no. Well, I disagree with my colleague there. My colleague says it's being petty. I understand why she would say that. But I say this. Mr Garrett, therefore, if he's true to his own word, has an opportunity now to stand up, walk over to the Minister, have a word in her ear and say, why don't we tie-ho on this piece of legislation for a couple of days or maybe till next week so I can have a look at the opposition's amendments, if he's true to the sort of goodwill gesture that he, out of one side of his mouth, that he proffered before the dinner break. But I'll take a bet with any member of the Parliament, I'll put $100 on it, that I bet you Mr Garrett won't do that. And I bet you, because what Mr Garrett wants is he wants to get the legislative notch on the belt. He is desperate to raise the flag up on this one because this is a cause célèbre. If he's not prepared to go over to the government and say, hang on, I said that I'd have a look at these ideas, I said that I'd maybe consider what is appropriate and common sense, then if he's not prepared to do that, then this is what it tells us. It simply tells us that Mr Garrett wants this legislation through come hell or high water in any form, and even if he sees some unjust problems with it and some solutions that we have provided, you're not interested in that. And that means that the last sort of series of accusations from him about us not sort of coming over cap in hand and giving him the amendments and sort of, bowing down before him as the oh great one, the man who so allegedly stands on the side of the victims when no one else in this chamber apparently does, then I say that's just words. But he does have an opportunity. He could stand up in this place tonight, or his leader could. His leader is the senior man on deck tonight, and say, OK, we'll have a look at these amendments. Because I say this, Mr Chair.
Mr Chair, thank you for